Peter Slattery is an international best-selling author, speaker, spiritual advisor, and educator. His extraterrestrial experiences started at an early age and continue to this day with hundreds of witnesses to events. His experiences with extraterrestrials have led him to help people and groups make ET contact themselves, in addition to healing and tapping into their own inner potentials.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, welcome back, Peter, to Exopolitics Today.
Michael, thanks for having me back. Great to connect again.
Yes, it is good. You sent me quite a few videos of UFOs over your property there in Wodonga, Albury, Australia. So for maybe those that need to be refreshed on what you've set up there in Australia, and tell them a little bit about the retreat, the ranch, and what it is that you do there with people who visit from all over Australia and maybe other areas of the planet.
Yeah, so we actually had somebody here from Germany on the weekend and a couple before that from the United States. So we've actually got people traveling from around the world here, but we're located about 30 minutes from Albury Wodonga near Rutherglen. And the purpose of doing this, yes, I've been working with James Gilliland for years, but I also had visions of this place about 15 years ago. And being trained in different disciplines of yoga, meditation, remote viewing, and a plethora of other things, as well as taking people out now since 2010 to see the crafts. It's something that from my heart I've put absolutely everything into, to have a place that's frequency specific, somewhere that people can come together and also be educated, not just on the extraterrestrial reality, but first and foremost the self-mastery aspect that can elevate people in their own lives and their own spiritual journey. That, to me, contact not just with extraterrestrials, but also angelic and spiritual beings just happen to be a part of that on that journey. So that's just a brief thumbnail sketch anyway.
So how important is it for people that want to have contact with extraterrestrials or communicate to go to a place like your retreat, which is very rural setting? There's not much in the way of traffic or kind of like the urban distractions that you get. The land is very clean, and I guess there's a very high vibration there. So, I mean, is that really a critical element for people to have contact, as opposed to maybe being in one of the big cities and like, hey, let's get to the local park and let's see if we can make contact happen?
You could say yes or no, and that's a really good question. And I'll give you this perspective. So growing up in Albury, traveling the world, living in Melbourne up until 5-6 years ago, I've been filming these crafts anywhere and everywhere, during the day, at night, in the middle of a city, in the rural area. So to me, again, it's that yes and no factor. I believe everyone's an experiencer, whether they're able to take notice of their thoughts, their ideas, the epiphanies, the concepts, the synchronicities, and where that is coming from some of the time. It doesn't mean we don't have our own thoughts. But when you're in a setting where you've got, we could say, clean energy rather than being in psychic turbulence, it very much amplifies the contact. And I'll give you an example. The property that I'm on actually has gold mining and quartz mining, as well as other elements, rights to actually mine. And 5 minutes away is the Murray River that actually has underground streams going under this property. So just like most paranormal hotspots, and before I was known for this, I was getting called up to some of the most haunted locations to do clearings and assisting situations where people needed it with paranormal phenomena. But what you've got is, when at the very least you've got quartz and running water, it's like an energy generator. So not only have I been having contact with physical extraterrestrials, but predominantly transdimensional intelligences. And in this case, on this property, I've been working with the original spirits, and also I have been working with Ulakai Brendan Murray, King of the Raven tribe, for years as well. So I'm working and we could say assisting and getting assistance, not just from original spirits, but also other forms of intelligences, that are local, ultra-terrestrials, up to extraterrestrial and angelic intelligences. But the main thing is that when you do the inner work and you join together as a group and you raise your frequency, what's happening now is that's the type of energy you're going to interface with. Otherwise, if you're just opening up the contact, physical contact, and you're not aware of negative influences, let's say, and sometimes these influences can actually be a projection from your own consciousness that you've created, even going into the egregore and tulpa situation, you can have experiences that may not have any fruit. And my thing is about people leaving this place having an experience that they needed, but also looking at the fruit from the experience. How did it help them be a better person, bring love into their life and empower them? And that's what, to me, true contact should involve.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a very important emphasis that you have there. Now, you sent these videos, and let's go through some of them that I think really kind of spectacular. Now, this first one we're going to show is showing some UFOs and a rod. So you want to just let's play the video. There's some sound effects, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, so this one's recent. It was a few weeks ago, actually. But Jason Gleaves, ex-UK Air Force and Aerospace, image analysis. He's got UF only. Actually, he'd be great to have in his show. He's analysed a lot of this. But we're filming anomalous orbs at the time, and then this went through that I noticed something at the time. I didn't know if it was a shooting star or something else. But this is what's known as typically as a rod. And I believe these are local, you could even say ultra-terrestrial intelligences that are just residing around us. So we've got the orbs in the sky. That's just as an example. That's a high-powered torch, which I've got to emphasize. I was the fall guy for lasers a decade ago. They put me on the television, and Vice magazine, at least back then, let me have a say to let's say, have a way to stand up for myself. So we're not using lasers, which are illegal in Australia. I'm using high-powered torches. And I think in a video there's some interaction with the high-powered laser that you can see it's responding, that it's not a plane, that it's not a drone and what have you, which shows interaction as well as telling people and getting people to do it themselves when they're here, what time and location the crafts are going to appear, which shows contact. And I've been doing that, helping people around the world for years to achieve that. And it's not really me doing it. It's holding the space and showing them a way to tap into that higher mind behind the mind, which is where the higher beings tap into, and how you can merge consciously momentarily and be able to derive that information if it's safe for those intelligences to do so. So, yeah, that's just one of, many videos.
Yeah, so that rod, so that's some kind of plasma consciousness, or what exactly? What kind of a being is that, or entity?
Yeah, like I haven't had much to do with them. They've actually rocked up here a few times on camera. I'm very well versed in infrared, how infrared works, knowing what is bugs, dust, reflection. In terms of those intelligences, the times that I have tapped into them, it's almost just like a being, like another animal that's residing around the area, like a kangaroo or a hare. But this is just something in another frequency, but it just happens to be a spiritual intelligence that appears like what you're saying. So besides that, I haven't got any more information. But when we're out there and the energy's out there, these things seem to appear when we're sort of laughing and having fun and getting into that mood.
Now, you showed that little bit there with the high-powered torch shining up. Now, you said that the UFOs, they respond to those high-powered torches or lasers in the United States. I mean, we've had examples of that, where they respond, they flash back the same light. Is that what happens in your experience?
Yeah, so you can go 1, 2, and it can go 1, 2, or just flash multiple times. People have seen me where I'll just look a direction and press the high-powered torch, and there'll be an automatic response, and we'll usually get that 3 times, and then it stops. There's nothing else after that. Sometimes it might be 1 or 2, and then there are what we call flashes up there and pulsating lights that I know from experience in some cases that can actually be space programs up there. So they are exotic craft, but they're not extraterrestrial, though sometimes they're either working or have extraterrestrials on board with Earth humans. But yeah, it's just a way to interface. But people go, well, how can they see what you're doing? Because how would you see that from up, up so high? Well, you can't really see it until you come to the sanctuary or be with me. And again, you don't have to come here to have contact. I think you can have it absolutely anywhere, which I've proved. But some of these crafts are about the size of a pickup truck just above the trees. And when I'm not zooming in, they're actually extremely low, but it may not appear like that. But when the crafts are up high, interfacing with a torch or a laser in the United States, which there's footage of me at ECETI and other places, Santa Barbara and Joshua Tree area, Palm Desert, filming this stuff. The way it was explained to me was that some of these beings can actually interface with your conscious from a distance. Sometimes they may be assisted with technology and they can see through your eyes, but some are so evolved that they could come over a town and be seeing and perceiving what everyone is doing at the exact same time. So they see it from my perspective by tapping into me consciously, which is how sometimes when the contact's taking place and I'm filming a craft, I'm in my mind's eye on the craft interfacing with them as well.
It's almost like a glow.
Cool. That's blue.
I thought it was blue too. That's not...
Hey Jody, we've got a blue orb over here, right here, and it's not on the tracker. That's the blue orb. See if it's blue in your psionics.
Oh yeah, it is blue.
Yeah, that's not on the tracker.
It's like an energy blob. It's not like a...
Yeah, that is
not
blue.
defined.
Is it kind of cloudish?
Yeah, it's like an energy mass.
Yeah.
That's the bluey, quite big.
That's the blue orb.
It was up there, and it was like all of a sudden I could see myself inside it and I could see the beings. So how common is that?
Well, for myself personally, because I do appointments, I do also just plug here, I do free clearings on Saturday. So if people can't afford an appointment and they feel like they need assistance with clearings, go to the website and I can do that. But I've worked with over 5,000 people now and advised a lot of people that have even come to me within institutes and governments. And a lot of these people are experiencers, especially when you even start getting into the UFO field, as you're aware. A lot of the researchers don't want to go there, but if you pull them aside and you go, hey, what did you have happen? They'll tell you an experience. And in terms of the mind's eye experience, it's not a super regular thing that everyone's having, but I'll say that I couldn't put a percentage on it, but it's more common than not for people to have a mind's eye experience like what we're describing. Up to the point that even if I've got physical contact with an angelic or an extraterrestrial intelligence, there is a difference. I can be looking at them physically and in my mind's eye, I'm getting a projection and a flicker of physical information that I've also got thought, feeling, and sensation, a download component that's in sync with that information while my eyes are open, focusing on them. So you talk to other experiences like I have now, thousands, and that is, again, not a super common thing, but it's more common than not. And one of the markers, but one of the big markers is the energetic component, that you get smashed with an energy is the only way I can describe it, that every part of you, a molecule is electrical is the only way that I can describe it. And depending on the intelligence will depend on the intensity of that. And I believe that it's really your light body overlapping their light body. And then it's projected through thought transfer that comes down from their consciousness down your crown through the right side of the brain to the left, and it's diluted by that point. But if you go with the knowingness, that information, which would be paragraphs of information, is really stored within the light body that's overlapping the physical body. And if you meditate or set an intention to sort of delve into information more, it's sitting within you, so you unfold that. But yeah, it's more common than not.
Now, you sent me another video clip, and this shows a blue orb. So, yeah, why don't you just describe, what was happening with this blue orb, and also mention how you use a satellite tracker to just make sure that these are real UFOs as opposed to a satellite that's been mistakenly identified.
Yeah, so this was from not the one over the weekend, but a few weekends before that, we had a 2-day skywatch. Now, this is what I'll describe as a Pleiadian conscious ship. It's purely created from consciousness, and there are not just Pleiadians, but other beings that do this as well. Sometimes I will just say blue orb. The fact that I say that is because sometimes I'm either not directly interfacing because I'm excited with people. As you can see, there's people there experiencing this. And when it's the Elohim, which is the positive Elohim, usually I'll call lower light the opposite of the positive Elohim, which fell. But the positive Elohim, their ships are an extreme liquid blue, pulsating, organic living light. And then people are unaware of this. Starlink, or some of the Starlink, they are blue as well, but there's a difference between the Elohim and the Pleiadian conscious ships that I'm describing. That it is a beautiful blue light, but it's just a blue light. And we've got over 6,000 Starlink in the sky now. But as people can see for themselves, and on the videos that I present, if you go to the Jaya Sanctuary Australia YouTube channel or jayasanctuary.com, you can actually see people filming me, and I'm showing the satellite trackers. I'm showing the cameras that are being used. I'm showing that we're using Geiger counters, EMF detectors, like the paranormal puck devices. We're using infrared beacons, compasses. We're even using trigger devices. So we're using all this with surveillance camera, colored infrared, as well as 4K cameras. And the tracker is a big thing because we want to be in truth, and I want people to see that it can't be explained. Now, there is cases, there's going to be Department of Defense stuff up there that's not on the tracker, but what people are unaware of is a lot of what's going up the last few years. The governments have been putting payloads on them, and they're getting registered, but they could be registered under something as well as a surveillance device, or that not being said at all. So even recently over the weekend, we've had drones for some reason flying nearby, which I show what drones look like and label it as drones. I show what aeroplanes look like and label it as that. But as with one of the videos you've got there as well, these orbs are appearing 3 to 5 foot off the ground. And we talked before earlier as well about the amount of Chinook black helicopters as well as camo helicopters that have been surveillancing me, not just here. And I got told that the closest that these are stationed is 2.5 hours away. These things have been following me not just in Australia, but I've been in America, and I've got footage of black helicopters stationary over me that are not civilian, they're military. So there's a lot to what goes into this. People think it's just like, oh, this, that, the other. They don't realize I'm working day and night, sometimes 16 hours to 18 hours, praying, doing the meditation, mowing the lawns, cleaning the place.
I got the camera on it, but that's exactly where I was seeing it. There it is. I just got it on camera.
Oh, good.
You mentioned the Pleiadians and the Elohim in association with these orbs. So are these orbs really just kind of like surveillance tools used by the Elohim and the Pleiadians?
In some cases, the orbs are the beings themselves that they'll break through into this reality. Sometimes they can be nature spirits, elementals. We can even leave the body as an orb, as well as angelic intelligences. I've actually got another 2 videos since sending you them, of them off the ground. I've even got them in the house, but we've got white ones that's appearing as reddish orange, and then really extreme orange ones with a white tube to them. And we've even had 3-foot ones, which I haven't got on camera yet, that are about 1 foot off the ground, and they're about 3 to 6 foot in diameter, and they're just a beautiful bright white light. So sometimes they are a thought form that's sent from the intelligence to come down, acting like a probe or a drone from their consciousness. Sometimes it actually is a technological device that can be sent. So it's not a black or white answer with that, because it's so vast what I've been interfacing with that it's really a case-by-case basis for me to say what this is or what that is. But we've even had angelic Orions coming through that are stationed, from what I've gleaned, in Mintaka, Aunilam, and Aunitak, that are intelligences, we could say, connected to those stars, which are gateway portals to the galactic center and also to other realms, because also the stars are actually, we could say, transportation devices, where even source energy comes from the galactic center. It distributes throughout the stars send that energy out to the planets, and we get affected by this in many different ways through the light and the frequency. So, yeah, it's a lot coming through and a lot of contact that's going on daily. Literally, it's going on daily, and people can see that for themselves.
Okay, so these blue orbs that you've been able to photograph and videotape, some of them are Elohim, some are Pleadian, and you mentioned these angelic Orion beings. So, we'll come back to that because that's worth getting more details about. But I'm interested in you sharing a story about being taken inside of one of these blue orbs and being transported somewhere. I mean, I've heard others talk about that, but you've got your own experience. So why don't you share that?
Yeah, so that was 2014, a specific experience where I was in my office. I was in Lavington at the time in Albury-Wodonga. And at that time, I was now aware of who the Elohim were. So let me preface this that I believe that we're all Elohim, and there are some that are purely monitors and regulators of their own domains, which are densities, and the color of them depends on the density that they operate in. There's also rainbow ones that are connected with all layers of consciousness. There are also ones that are creators from the light blueprint that create physical reality. The ones that fell are the ones that created the AI that work, let's say, in cahoots with reptilian intelligences, serpent intelligences, those of a lower vibratorial state that create a chaotic energy that they actually feed on so they don't go to a higher vibratorial state. So I know that's a bit there to take, but one of my main contacts are the Elohim, and they're specifically blue. Some of them can even appear as if they're on fire, which is actually just a light that they're emanating. And it is plural for gods. And I believe that we're all a cell of God's body, the one intelligence that we're all a part of. Now, in this experience, what had happened was they originally used to start to appear as a blue, liquid, beautiful blue light that would be anywhere from tennis ball to baseball size. And then one day they turned, one of them specifically, there was lightning in the home, which was weird enough, but sometimes there'll be lightning in their presence, or what appears as lightning, and they'll turn into these 7-foot tall liquid blue light beings that are nor male nor female. So I was first approached by one of them, and then two that told me they were the Elohim. And not long after that, I think the initial contact was 2011 when they appeared as a liquid blue light being. But in time, I was in the office, an orb came into the office, and it turned into a column of light and went back into an orb as basically through thought transfer, I was asked to approach it. And then it just went back into an expanding orb, and pop, my ears went pop. There was like a jolt, and it was like it was caressing me as I appeared in another place, which at that time was in Sigma Orionis at a place called Adiga Haya of Zion. Don't ask me why it's that. That's just what came through thoughts transfer to where I was taken to a stone circle. And the place had a purplish pinkish sky, very rainforesty environment. And I was taken to this stone circle where there was geometric information that appeared when I went in it as a download integration situation occurred and experience occurred. And then I was approached by the same Elohim and then teleported to another place that I later understood more about, but it's a place called Liga near Merope or Merkabha, depending on how you describe it. And there was a pillar there, and there was a shockwave of light that came out from it that went through me when I was taken to that place there. And finally, I was taken to a place in Sirius called Ali Zaya of Sirius B. I hope I'm getting this right, because I don't talk. I sat on this for 10 years, except family and friends knew this, and I didn't talk about it because it was more of a personal experience. And it can be entertaining for people, but to live through it was a lot because there was integration. But in that place, I was taken into a pyramid to where there was lords of light at each of these places, which are a faction of the Elohim. This one had light beings that had script on their face. And I was teleported then to a place that was a transdimensional meeting place that now was not physical, but it's like my consciousness was pulled physically out. And I was in 3 places at the same time simultaneously. Now, I feel that that's what happened there. I know I was physically taken to those 3 locations, but when I was in Sirius and it was like my consciousness was pulled out, I was taken to like a meeting place that you can be in 3 places at the same time, but it's the same place. And so sometimes I think that that was physical, sometimes not. But then I was pulled back from that place and bilocated back to my office. And all that I surmised took about 15 minutes, literally. That was 15 minutes off world. And then there was an experience on Mars actually not that long after that, actually around the same time. And the interesting thing since is that I've had a lot of tests done, and John Vivanco, who's had a team of up to, I think, 40 remote viewers working on me, everything comes back to genetics a lot. And I was meant to be half blind by the time I was 20, and I've got perfect eyesight now. I just turned 41 on the weekend, or last Friday. And also my creatine levels are extremely through the roof, that some theorize 2,000 times higher than any other human. But it's also said that creatine levels that high, which I couldn't keep on doing the testing, it's a marker to look into contactees. And I believe the way it's been put to me is that when you actually physically go to these other realms or even crafts or other planets, the body is affected in such a way that as a protection mechanism, it's creating extra creatine as a rebuilding phase for the body to rebuild itself. So make of that what people want. I know that half of this sounds bat crazy. I get that. I think, that's just the way it's been for me. And I won't try to convince anyone otherwise of what, me being right or wrong. It's like, this is what I've experienced. It's not my truth. It's what is. It's as simple as that. And like I was saying on Sunrise here, which you'd be aware of what Sunrise is, it's a big morning show here. As I said years ago, some of these beings are like ghosts and they're multidimensional. And here we are now, and people aren't laughing about what I was saying back in 2012.
Okay, so if someone's going to be having this kind of interaction with one of these blue orbs that are being generated by these highly evolved beings, whether we're talking the Elohim or the Pleadians, then you're going to have distinctive DNA or higher consciousness and high keratin levels. Now, I mean, that's interesting because as far as I know, keratin levels mark they identify a particular dietary style of kind of like high fruits and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being tested. My wife was also tested, and we both had very high keratin levels, much higher than the tester, and she was really surprised. They were really surprised at that. So that's interesting. So how keratin levels? I mean, I'm not quite sure. I mean, that is a marker. Now, is that just through a particular diet, or is it through a combination of diet and meditation, or are we talking about DNA and consciousness and that dictates your diet and your kind of like meditation?
I think it's a byproduct, and I think it gets even more with the more evolved the contact goes. And I'll give you an example. I don't think DNA can change. And the reason I say this is because I've had scientists looking. I've got a best-selling channeled information, a book called The Book of Shiji 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is a Pleiadian channeling. The first one that actually is now free as an audio book on YouTube. I just put up celebrating 10 years. There are serious people that took that information, as well as I talked to a geneticist, a former geneticist for the Australian government. What I can tell you from what even they're saying, they believe in what you're talking about, what I'm talking about. Their look at this from a genetics point of view is that you cannot change DNA, but there is things like cogs in a wheel within the DNA that when they turn on, these other things start to come online. And as we know, there's a very mild difference between even us and an ape. The way I see it is that the light from even the orbs or the beings when you interface, or even from source. And the way I'll explain this is if you look at the stars like a neuron network in the brain, or even now the heart, we know from heart math that our heart even has a brain, that there's energy coming in from the galactic center that's going out to the stars like I was mentioning before, and even through the solar flares and what's happening. And we've got huge amounts of a lot of activity happening with the sun in this solar maximum, more than recent times, we could say, with the amount of even here we're getting the aurora happening here. That light carries information and photon information, which photons can exist in different densities. and it's going through and into us. And not only is it affecting us on a bio level, we could say a magnetic field, our light body level, our photon robe that we may not be able to see in the visible light spectrum, which is actually our Merkabah, but it's also affecting us on a cellular level and also within that DNA that I believe we go through ascension cycles, and you can actually activate this through intense work and intention, just like we hear about the rainbow body and or with the Tibetans and or the Merkabah in Jewish mysticism, which is the two opposing tetrahedrons, which where this led for me, not only rainbow beings in Orion that I experienced, but it also led me to understanding that the rainbow body and the Merkabah are entwined, and it's all through light consciousness. And our DNA, as we know through Greg Braden's work, carries basically God's name in 4 languages within us. And this is where it gets very convoluted with my information, is that the Merkabah is not just a non-physical astral or etheric device that we can use with our consciousness. Human beings, Earth human beings, have the capability to go from a physical form as we are right now having this conversation to ignite a Merkabah around them and then turn into rainbow light where they merge with God's source creator and navigate through thought where they want to reappear as a rainbow light, as a Merkabah with a physical form in it, and they can be physical again. Making Star Trek teleportation look like child's play, because how do I know this? I've experienced this, and beings have taken me in their Merkabah this way. And that was predominantly the first time that took me aback was with Penkei, which I told you about in an email, which is a being from Orion, teleported me to the ERC, which is Elohim Representative Council, where there are meetings that take place in a cathedral structured from light that actually the fluctuation and the brightness of the place depends on the emotions you have when you're there, which is pretty cool. But it's all connected. The DNA has a light blueprint. Everything in physical existence has a light blueprint component. Through thought, we create on the light blueprint, as above, so below, it manifests in the physical reality. And the way it's been explained to me is that there is nothing quite like the Earth human. It's not to go into ego and go, look at us, we're special. But there's literally nothing that's a conglomerate of this many extraterrestrial races with angelic components. The situation is we don't even realize what we're capable of. And
Now you mentioned being transported in an orb, and that was sent and picked you up. You also mentioned being taken by a Merkabah. Now, what does a Merkabah look like? And you mentioned the being who came in the Merkabah. So does that mean if you're picked up by a Merkabah, that there's a being inside of that, and they can kind of like get you or have you come into that Merkabah vehicle? How does that work? Because I mean, it seems that these are very different transportation devices used by these highly evolved beings.
Well, this is where it even makes things like the medbed or extraterrestrial vehicles, and not putting it down. I've been on board ships, I interface with extraterrestrial. It makes it look like child's play. I've been trying to tell this community that these ETs have angels and demons and spiritual evolution to go through too. They may be at a high level of consciousness, but they're still ascending and wanting to evolve to that next level. When you get into the Merkabah, if you look at biblical text from the reference of what I'm about to say, that every time or nearly every time you see a throne or chariot mentioned and know that that's actually Merkabah, you'll start to understand that this is what is in the sky. Now, it looks like a ball of light. And what you've got is a situation that it's a 3-sided, or actually 4 pyramid. There's one's pointing up, one's pointing down, and they overlap. So they're intersecting tetrahedrons. One's spinning one direction, one's spinning in the other direction. And some will say one's for masculine, one's for feminine. Now, this is our light robe, our light vehicle, our spiritual essence. And I believe that this is the image of God. And even I saw through Wilcock a while ago, through somebody at a Polish university, they took the first photo of a photon and it looks like the Knights Templar cross. But when you put it 3-dimensionally, it appears as a Merkabah. So when you go into this information of light, photon, and we've got our own light body, which is our photon robe. This is a spiritual device that I believe we all already have, but it depends on your level of consciousness to access it. As an example, there are extraterrestrial vehicles to where the crafts are grown from the pilot or who is to pilot them's DNA, and the craft can even be symbiotic with consciousness and sometimes AI to have its own personality, we could say. Now, you can even have technologies like this, even weaponry, but what I've been told is that you have to be at a certain level of consciousness to access this with the responsibility that comes with it, because you wouldn't do harm when you're at that certain level of consciousness unless, let's say, you use a bomb to blow up, let's say, an asteroid or something going to hit a certain place and destroy life, or something that's of benefit, and you're trying to level the playing field without crossing universal law. So you've got these types of, let's say, exotic technologies. Even in some cases, it's picking up the conscious signature of the pilot, and that's the only way you can gain access to the weaponry or the machine, extraterrestrial vehicle. Now you go into a Merkabah. A Merkabah is the image of God, one of the images of God. It's a frequency image. You change it, you could start seeing dodecahedrons or different plutonic solids. The Merkabah is a device that, like I was saying, and nobody else is talking about it in this way, that I believe once it powers up enough, it starts to go into rainbow light. You dissolve into source, and through thought, you can navigate where you want. These Merkabahs, and I actually spoke to somebody connected to the UK Ministry of Defence a while ago about a document I'd received. And in that document, it talked about some of these triangular crafts being three beings in their Merkabah projecting the physical craft. Now, we've got a situation where some of these sources is a way to interface with humans to step them up in consciousness to open up to a greater reality. But if they purely showed up in their Merkabah, people might not be able to integrate it. So this is where there is a weaning in happening through the Merkabah in some examples that are physical crafts. But then you've got these Merkabah light vehicles that I believe we all have, that they traverse space and time in their light body, and they understand that the universe is conscious and know how to navigate it because they're at the level of consciousness to do so. So they can go anywhere they want in space and time, back, forwards, pop in and out. They don't even really have to float around. They can just appear, and yeah, they can move in that sense. But it's a different thing again when you add the rainbow body component to it, because even Namkai Norbu, a Tibetan teacher who's no longer with us, he talks about the rainbow body being taught in 13 star systems. Now, even when you look at mandalas the world over, the Merkabah keeps reappearing. The Star of David on the Israeli's flag. You go out through different cultures, into India, into Tibet, around the world, you keep seeing the Merkabah again, which if you think about the Star of David, it's very much a 2D version of that, but that could give people a visual reference if they know what that flag looks like.
Now, I know that Drunvalo or Melchizedek, I mean, he wrote a 2-volume series, The Flower of Life, where he trained people or gave the outlines of how you can activate your own Merkabah body. And it was all about a particular training, and you got to develop your consciousness and your intention and your focus to be able to do that. I mean, it's quite difficult. I did the course. I mean, I don't feel like I got anywhere close to being able to activate my Merkabah body, but as we move into this future of higher frequencies, the Star Trek future and all of that, are more and more people going to be able to learn, or maybe spontaneously begin developing or manifesting or activating their own Merkabah body to be able to travel the universe, as you say?
I think it's already occurring. I also have been training people in this. There's actually a free Merkabah video online, but I've gone through different teachings on in a couple of books in my online course as well. Now, my point with this is that this is real. It's not just an astral or etheric thing. This is even with myself, I've had light phenomena appear around me and people have seen this. And I believe that's the light body coming online, to the point that what you start to get is what we perceive as superhuman abilities. I've levitated. I've been able to do telekinesis a couple of times. People have seen this. I don't know how this all works. This is why I went and trained in yoga. I went and trained in remote viewing. I went and trained in so many different disciplines because I was wanting to understand the mechanics, because I experienced and I've done these things, but I don't know how it all works. But what I do know from the intel that's been revealed to me is that this is, again, it's not a black or a white thing. My little joke is it's beyond 50 shades of grey in the middle where the answers lie. So the perspective I'll give is that we do go through cycles of ascension, and some will stay, some will go. Some might know this is the harvest through the law of one. I haven't read that. People say it's very similar to the information that I channeled. The biblical text goes on about this as well. And it doesn't mean people are bad or good or enlightened. We're all where we're at, but I believe the way it's being put to me is either way we go through a shift. And depending on where one is at will depend on how far that shift goes for them, whether it's to a new earth, whether they stay here, whether they go beyond the realms of existence they think they've previously experienced and go to the higher states of consciousness. And some may go back to the star nations. They may go to otherworldly places. They may go to complete other realms. It really is on the individual and the type of inner work that they've done, and also what they want to do, because there is free will within this. And it's a very layered thing, but either way, there's a shift that is a part of this.
Now, we talked about the blue orbs, and you've been taken in them, and those have been kind of sent or associated with these higher evolved beings, Pleadians, Elohim, and so forth. But there's also other types of blue orbs that have been described by researchers. There's a book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, where the researchers describe a case where these blue orbs actually entered physically into a person and caused them very serious health problems. So, yeah, what's going on there?
Yeah, look, it's hard for me to have an opinion on that. But what I will say is just because people have seen blue orbs doesn't mean they've seen what I've seen. And like I was saying, I was known even for the paranormal stuff before all of this, meaning, more ghosts and hauntings and things. And I can tell you now that there has been a lot of negative blue orb experiences. My thing is, I'll give you a litmus test for myself. When I'm in the presence of the Elohim, I can't stop crying. The love and the bliss, it cannot be faked. Not from that standpoint. Pleiadians, you get giddy. There's other things where with blue orbs, people just have this daunting, extremely negative feeling. And if you get that, that's where clearings, getting into the heart space, there's so many things you can do and only so much you can do depending on the intelligence and their intention. Doesn't mean you can clear it and stop it straight away, but my thing is going into a clearing, going into a prayer, pushing your energy, your light body out. So when you're in a high vibratorial state, just like with what people might get as an attack, let's say sleep paralysis in some cases, that can be you coming back in your body from an out-of-body experience. It can be your extraterrestrial friends and family putting you back and you're waking up partly through it. It can also be a negative entity or experience to where you're paralyzed, and usually there'll be a negative dream or energy associated with it. So as we've got positive Elohim, we have got what I call the dark masters, the lower light. Even though we're saying blue light, just for all intents and purposes, I call them the lower light because they're void of light. They're void of love. Love creates light. So in situations like this, and I have heard many, not as many as positive experiences with blue light, but I would say that is something that I'm not interfacing with. But those cases do exist and are definitely real. I've had orbs go in and out of me as well. I haven't had any negative side effects that I'm aware of, but that stuff, I've seen them go through walls and appear in portals and everything. So yeah, that stuff's real. But on that specific case, I can't mention. It's just nothing that I have experienced. I've experienced darkness, but not from blue orbs.
Okay, great. Well,
Yeah.
here's another video clip that we're going to show, and it shows some ET ships that are doing a power up, a double power up. So yeah, you want to walk us through, what's going on here?
Yeah, these are angelic intelligences. This is extremely low. I was just walking out to the car park one night to lock the gate at the sanctuary, and these cruised on by. So these, again, they're about the size of a pickup. And that was just them saying g'day. You can actually hear me almost crying on the video. When you have these experiences, remember I said before, there's an energetic, like an electrical energy. It just goes throughout every part of you. So that was just an experience of them popping by, just saying hello. And that's what they'll do on a regular basis. And daily, really, it is that type of phenomena happening here, at least on the lower levels of telepathy at the very least.
Okay. So is this how you distinguish, or is part of distinguishing these kinds of UFOs that are connected with the ET consciousness? I mean, how would you differentiate that from, say, satellites?
Yeah. So, look, there's iridium flares, which some could say that's iridium flare. You're not going to get iridium flares at that time and that low. You've also got, basically what that is when the satellite's flicking, the sunlight is still hitting the lights at a certain level, like the solar panels are giving that effect. So you've got that. Again, we use trackers. With my own personal experiences, unless I'm consciously interfacing, I will check a satellite tracker or something, because there are other things that I will see that's paranormal and I'm not consciously interfacing. And on the odd occasion, it's something that is explainable. Just like a lot of people might see the space station here and I go, that's the space station, but they've never seen it or really taken notice. So to them, that's paranormal when it's something that it's not. There's always a conscious connection or energy at the very least that I will get with something, which is that energy that I'm describing. And this is something where researchers and people, unless they've experienced it, they have to sort of be with me to take note of when it's occurring, maybe the first time. And then they'll realize they've most likely had this happening on and off throughout their entire life. Again, you know what drones look like. You know what the flight paths are and what planes do look like as well. And then you've got situations where some of these orbs can appear to disappear, but now what's happening is they're in the shadow of the Earth and the sun's no longer reflecting on them, and it can appear that way. Also looking at things from a coloured or infrared perspective of things completely disappearing, which is pretty much impossible on infrared, because either way it's always picking up a signature of what's there, even if you can't see it with the physical eye. So literally the expertise, people that know me going back to 2010, what I was doing before that, I have done every single thing you can think of with infrared and cameras, everything to learn about it, because there is an aspect where sometimes you can have these experiences and feel something, capture it on a camera or a video camera, and you don't see it at the time. And you can think it's paranormal when in reality, in some cases, it's not. It's something explainable. But if people don't understand how light works, how infrared works, they can, or even a flash on a camera can work and focus, they can perceive something to be paranormal when it's not. So I go with the consciousness connection that I get. And either way, there will be that very minimal, but sometimes I may not understand exactly what it is. I just know that it is something, another form of intelligence.
Okay, well, let's look at this other video clip you sent, and it shows a UFO responding to a high-powered torch. So, yeah, I mean, how important is it when you have this kind of interaction or some kind of reaction from the UFO that corresponds in some way to the light that's being shined towards it?
Well, it's just confirmation for myself. That was actually one not from a high-powered torch. That's just me walking outside asking something to power up, and it just appears and does because I can feel it. So that's an example. No torch. In my consciousness, I ask for a power up, and boom, it does a power up. So how's that possible when I'm on the ground and it's in the sky? And it's not really up that high. And in the same, if not a similar video, which might be another video, you can actually see the craft appear. It's powered up, and then it completely disappears in coloured infrared. And then you start to see a plane in the background, so you can see the difference of how high the plane is and how low the orb is. And that's all through conscious connection. I just know. My family, friends, people that know me, I can go into a zone. It just happens. And I'll just go, they're here. And in one case, I literally put my head out just from the the roof outside where we were eating dinner, and there was a craft broad daylight just sitting there. So it's a conscious connection, and I can't explain it any other way except, let's say, for women have that women's intuition, that knowingness. It's the only way that I can describe the way the contact can be as a call to go outside, or when they're in the home, I know when to get a device and start filming if that's okay with the experience to be done. You just know. And unless you experience it, that just knowing to some may not be good enough, but it's just how it works. You just know. And then you will see the being, have the experience, the materialization of a crafted being will take place. So, yes, it's strange if you don't understand it, and I get that, but I'm sure you've probably experienced very similar things yourself.
Yeah, I've experienced some, power-ups, some craft responding to intention, from the person or the group that's being guided to interact with the craft in some way, asking it to power up or whatever. So here's another one, number 6 in our sequence of the UFO manifesting. So yeah, tell us about this one.
Yeah, so this is like 5 or 6 hours after sundown. These are crafts that are appearing while we're initiating contact. And you probably can't hear the audio, but everyone's having a good time and even saying that's got to be, a craft. Like what these things were doing, how they were maneuvering, how they were appearing, how they were completely disappearing, again in coloured infrared. This is just an experience of the contact that's taking place here, as well as if they go on to the YouTube and the website, they can see the daytime crafts that I've been getting here for the last 4 years, as well as actually nearly 15 years if you look at extensively on the Peter Maxwell Slattery YouTube channel as well.
Now, I wanted to ask you about, you've referred to angelic Orions, and I mean, the Orion constellation, I mean, some people refer to it as a place where you have these kind of like negative Orion grey beings that do slave trading and so forth. Others talk about the belt of Orion as a place, a high spiritual area, and that there's a nebula in there where also you have both benevolent and negative. So yeah, you want to tell us about the belt of Orion, these angelic Orions. Who are they?
Yeah, look, there is what James even calls as James Gilliland. He talks about the Orion Council of Light. I've had interactions where I've even described the initiation headband that goes up with there's 2 arcs that come off it. And when I told him and showed him a drawing I had done of that, he said that the only person he's ever seen with that precise, and I think, if I'm correct, J.J. Hurtak, the Keys of Enoch experiencer who was taken off world for 3 days, he's described similar intelligences. From my experience, the way I've got to preface this is it's like Hollywood within this community. People get carried away with the negative. Now, I will say in Rigel, which is part of the Orion constellation, it is known that there are negative intelligences there from my sources. I'm not sure about anyone else. I believe there are a few outposts still in existence. So we had the Lyran War, which was initiated by the fallen Elohim, the AI, reptilian and serpent, and other intelligences. Now, that blew up the main star. That war down the track, it offshooted to what we could say and is known as the Orion Wars. The negative aren't from Orion, but from my information, when they went there, the core part of this was to distribute AI into the stars, because the stars are connected and can be distributed elsewhere, and also the Horsehead Nebula, because it goes multidimensionally. And if you put something in there, it can spread out multidimensionally. And that is, from my knowledge, what the main part of that Orion War was about, to where there was outposts for the negative, meaning reptilian intelligences, which aren't the end-all be-all or at the top of the scale for the negative. They're foot soldiers. So you've got many variations of reptilian greys, Draco reptilians, Earth reptilians, the list goes on. But what you've also got there is human beings that are our ancestors, as well as in Lyra, Sirius, and elsewhere, that are very enlightened beings that learnt a peaceful warrior streak within them from the wars and striving. And for some, the only way I could describe it is brought out the Jedi within. They became light warriors, light workers in some cases. And so the angelics are a different thing in that sector. I've had experiences with angelic intelligences. That is the first time I heard specifically angelic Orions, which with that I got information that they occupy that space around the belt and are what I could describe as regulators, different from the Elohim, which also exist in that spot. So that's as much as I've got on the angelic Orions. It's not much because that was literally just in the last few weeks that was revealed to me, that connection and them occupying the belts and that area. But yeah, it's not all positive. It's not all negative. But I think just people hear negative and all of a sudden, because there's negativity within that constellation, which is vast. We're actually on the Orion arm where we are. The Orion constellation is so vast that when people can perceive actually how big it is and go, oh, well, maybe there's a few bad eggs there or a few bad spots, they can start to open up to the equilibrium of it all. Just like Earth, we've got some positive and some negative.
Very true. Now, with Andromeda, I mean, there are beings from Andromeda. I mean, you've mentioned them. So, yeah, you want to tell us what do they look like? How do they behave? Because, I mean, the first time I heard of the Andromedans actually came from the Billy Meyer material. He talked about the Andromedans helping the Lyran refugees in their journey to find a home in the Pleiades. So, yeah, what do you know of the Andromedans and where do they come from and what role do they play?
Yeah, so my experience with the Andromedans that I've interfaced with, there's a couple. So, and I want to preface this to be very specific because when people say Andromedans to me, well, it's like, well, where? Are you talking about the constellation or the galaxy? And I'll give a bit of a difference on that. So there are beings from the Andromeda galaxy, which is our neighboring galaxy and is apparently merging with us, which will take an extremely long time. There is an ascended collective there in what was told to me is an 8D intelligence that are orange light beings in their Merkabah that can be perceived as angelic, but they are not. And they are also peaceful warriors, and some of them have even had a fractal aspect incarnate on Earth and elsewhere to where they assist with helping elevate consciousness on worlds and do it from a protector way without crossing universal law due to the fallen Elohim, the negative Elohim, and the lower light, which they're doing things within universal law behind the scenes, which is how they've been effective doing what they're doing. In terms of Andromeda constellation, I believe if I've got this right, Tidalin, there's a being that's blue, red hair, beautiful blue eyes that I've been interfacing with called Calzen, part of a group called the Zanu. And that contact's been going on for quite some time. There's also another type there, James Gilliland speaks about this as well, that are very much like us, but they're more glowing, more orange, but they're human-like, and they've got like what I could describe as, I wouldn't call it computer circuitry, but it's very similar like that, but as a tattoo on their skin. And both groups, from my experience, are positive intelligences. And I know that one of the head councils within the Milky Way galaxy is actually occupied in the Andromeda galaxy as well as Arcturus. And that was put to me because they're that far evolved that they're very much great at mediating, seeing the faults on both sides and just calling it out why a situation is what it is, and assisting as a neutral party, both some Arcturians and some Andromedans, to help people just move, or beings move through situations and trials and tribulations and situations that parties may be facing, whether it's not agreeing on something or we could say even avoiding wars in some cases. And that's an important part to put here as well, is that even the angelics are at war, and so too are some extraterrestrial races. But I would say it's very minimal compared to what can be blown out of proportion with the negative intelligences out there that do occupy parts of the Milky Way galaxy.
Now, you've talked about the Pleadians from Era or Lyra, and now Billy Meyer talked about those back in 1975. And so, I mean, are we talking about the same beings? I mean, he talked about these Pleadians that came from the planet era, or from the star system. Actually, no, I think it's the planet era in the
Taygeta.
Taygeta, exactly.
Yeah,
Are
people
we
have told
talking
me
the same
thing.
beings?
Well, Billy's talked about that. From my standpoint, no, they are humanoid, but from a different space time, but occupying, they've said era as well as James has said the same. So I've had that. The main contacts for me have been from Merope, either actually from the star itself or Merkabah, depending on how you want to pronounce it, either from the star itself or from a planet called Liga, is paying homage to Lyra and Vega. Liga is the way it was pronounced to me. So actual planet around Merkabah, which is totally different from what Billy's talking about. There are humanoid intelligences there, as well as ascended beings on that star, which is where Shiji's from, which is the channeled material that I've done. And also there's a physical aspect of her on Liga as well as Era. It gets a bit fractal, a bit weird now. There's also blue humanoid feline intelligences from Liga as well in the Pleiades. So also there's blue skin beings there. There's melanin dominant beings there. Like when we start talking about the Pleiades, people do not realize how many stars are actually there, and actually that is still a very young star system, 44 light years, 444 light years away in our time, that the light we're perceiving now is from that amount of time ago. So that's how long it takes to travel and hit us. But there's also, when I've been in ships, if we change frequency, there can be other planets residing in the exact same spot with the parent star or stars, depending if it's binary or not, which most are actually binary. And as you keep going up frequencies, there can actually be new stars and new planets, and the old stars that were there start to die out while you're occupying the exact same space. So this is where a lot of people are having contact from the Pleiades. I've did extensive work years ago with Ulakai Brendan Murray, King of the Raven Tribe, bringing out information on how Uluru and Katajuda were brought here from the Pleiades to smash into Earth to terraform it for civilization and create the Australian Aboriginal to incarnate in. There's been the Strongs do a lot of work on the Gosford glyphs, the Pleiadian glyphs as well. And then you've got the Japanese talking about beings in ships from the Pleiades coming here, sky ships, as well as Native Americans talking about Pleiadians, and also even the Rainbow Warrior tribe, the Rainbow Body, and also Orions. So this is stuff that I wasn't really privy to, either partly through my contacts or partly into my research years later, because they're just brought up all over the place, the Pleiadians. But from what I was told is that in most cases, they are actually us in the future. And that can be a bit of a mind bender for some people. But when you're talking about certain technologies that can traverse space and time, whether it's a physical machine and or beings doing it in a light body, it starts to all make sense and bring a bigger picture together.
Yeah, well, that definitely is something to think about, that they could be us from the future, because we can truly imagine how in 300 years, 400 years, humanity would have evolved to be able to set up colonies in different star systems and go back in time and kind of interact. So that's kind of mind-blowing when you think about that. You mentioned a feline race, and you've talked about the Sirius star system, and you mentioned the names Padma and Lashira, that these are feline extraterrestrials. So yeah, can you talk about the felines from Sirius? So they seem to play a pretty important role in the kind of evolution of humanity.
They do. I've come across feline lion type beings from also Lyra. You've got that there, Lyra, Leo, and I've talked about them in the Pleiades, as well as I know some in Orion. But Sirius, so Sirius Padma is more of what I would say more cat-like than lion-like. There's a difference. She just looks more like a cat, but pardon me, a humanoid being. And the way it was put to me is that these beings are light workers. So they've gone from being physical to what I would describe as, well, the first experience I had, which is going to sound a bit weird, I was on a recliner in my home, and I'd been a bit beat up from energetically from some stuff going on, and three of these feline beings appeared while I'm on the recliner with my eyes closed, but all of a sudden it was like my eyes are open and I could see three cat beings standing over me, and I opened my eyes up and I could still see where I was, but they were in apparition form like a ghost. Closed my eyes and they were clear as day again, opened my eyes and they were still there, like physically there, but paraphysical, meaning partly physical, partly not. And it is an old friend, Patmos specifically is an old friend from Sirius, and they are not just masters and manipulators of energy, they understand light and sound, and they actually pulled my light body out like a rainbow. Again, rainbow body, I didn't understand this back then, and they were running they were like paw palms, like hands, but paws as well, through the light. The only way I could describe it was they were assisting tuning my light body like a guitar or an instrument. And they have done this a number of different times. And in later information, they were saying we also do this, but on the distribution network points between stars and also on planets as well. Those things I'm talking about in one sense are the points where you can go into a star, which is a portal, and appear at another star. There's navigations that happen between star systems by traveling actually into the stars, and they monitor and regulate, and we could say are monitors of that. It's not that they need to be doing that, but that's what they do in terms of many different factors, because some of these tunnels networks can actually shut down due to where they are in their own cycle, and so they have jobs keeping networks going on a tunnel system and also a light body system on planetary bodies, and also how there's magnetic tunnels that are going from stars to the planetary bodies. So if you can imagine, I spoke earlier about the light blueprint. Everything's got a light blueprint component. They seem to be able to balance between being physical and non-physical, and are master manipulators of light. So that means they can heal, but they can also create, manifest, and that seems to be where they're at now, as well as being explorers for their home world, which still exists, but they're master beings and explorers as well.
That seems to be very similar to the way the ancient Egyptians described the cat people or the lion people. Another group of non-humans that you've described or mentioned having contact with are the Bigfoot or the Sasquatch, as we call them here in the US, or Yowie in Australia. So you want to tell us about your interactions with them, and who are they? Are they another kind of byproduct of extraterrestrial genetic experimentation on planet Earth?
What now? When I say stuff, I'm not going to say it as if it's fact for all cases. I can only go by what I've been experiencing or my intel. The intel that I have is that some of them are natural here, but were actually brought here, like we're extraterrestrials visiting and then stayed, and they this is their world, the ones that were born here. And some are purely extraterrestrial. Some have ascended to where they can go from an orb form and appear physical as well, which America had a huge lot of cases of this occurring in the 1970s, and that is partly what's going on here. People will go, what, in Australia? Well, I've had a number of physical Bigfoot experiences in Australia as well as in America, one at ECD Ranch in broad daylight, and there's a footcast James has of that as well. And what I'm seeing and experiencing here is them more coming in orb form and making noises, and then not actually seeing them, but I know telepathically they're there, and then the flashing lights will occur again. So this is where some of them have ascended to the point that they can go into an orb, let's say Merkabah, because when it's spinning that quick, it can give an orb appearance. Not saying there aren't beings that aren't in their spheres of light, but techniques I work with even for light body activation is working with the sphere of light, because it contains all the light body templates. And a lot of time, Merkabahs, because they're spinning so quick, they're just going to look like a ball of light. And these Bigfoot have that capability. Also talking to original people elders here, and I have worked with Native American elders as well, and talked about this. They've also got stories, and I found out later, stories within the Asias and even going up to Russia and other parts of hairy people. So as far out as it sounds, like these stories even go back to the Australian original people, the Aboriginal people here, of little hairy people and also big hairy people. And I think part of it's what's going on here at the sanctuary is that it's a bit of a mecca spot, which is why I was brought here, because there's gold and quartz, the running water, and not only is there physical contact occurring, but also transdimensional contact. And I believe that's partly just because of the energy with where I'm sitting with all the gold and quartz and running water.
Now, we have been told about these different federations or confederations that are interacting with the Earth. I mean, you had this Israeli space scientist, Haim Eshed, saying that the Galactic Federation is working with the Trump administration. I mean, you've had others talking about the Confederation of Planets. That's from the Law of One material. Now, and they are kind of like a more spiritual organization. Now, you've talked about the Elohim Representative Council and the Unified Galactic Council. How do they compare with these other organizations that, we know a little bit about, the Galactic Federation of Worlds, for example, or the Confederation of Planets?
So the Elohim Representative Council is people like myself from different worlds that go and experience and bring information back and also take information to Earth. And it's more of a frequency specific thing. I'm not just the only one experiencing this, but what I'll say is that this is probably getting right up there before you hit angelic and source in terms of the frequency. Like I said, you can't be in their presence without having tears. And it's more assisting worlds with their transitional periods and bringing light into them. But why it has to be done in this way, it's like, why can't the Elohim do it themselves? One, there's universal law, but two, there are transdimensional technologies that even humans have built that can block out transdimensional surveillance and even bilocating and remote viewing and teleportation into these bases, deep underground military bases and what have you. So even though they're so far advanced, there are technologies that can block them out energetically, and there's people like me that experience these places and take that information back. It doesn't make me special or anything. I'm not trying to say that, because there's many people having these experiences. In terms of the United Galactic Council, and also there's the United Galactic Security Council, I was told that these were put in place, and they were put in place to assist because things have gone awry in other federations or councils that were created for their purposes. And whether it was because they were infiltrated or what have you, this was specifically created to have people, and not me, but I've interfaced with them, people at this moment, there's 27 worlds that are going through similar ascension cycle and transitional periods, maybe not to the extent that we are. And the job is to assist the people that are on the worlds that they're helping to transition into a smooth transition into their new reality of not being alone. And for some, this will not just be extraterrestrial, this will also be transdimensionally. With that said, they have ships like a security force. And again, the main reason this was started up was because other things that apparently had gone awry. I don't understand all that. That's just the way it was put to me. One of their ships, actually, John Vivanco was here and experienced from America when he was at my cabin down near Mount Buffalo at the time. It actually came in and did a 360 and went off. And they've actually got cigar-type ships that actually hold these smaller ships that are like triangles with the front cut off. And they've both got a red stripe on the side that is very similar to the A-Team. If you remember the A-Team and the black van they've got with the red stripe, there's very similar signature on the smaller triangular crafts as well as the cigar ships. And Omar, which is like a cat, pig, dog man, he's got a sense of humor and it's an old friend, this intelligence. John Vivanco and his team has remote viewed this, but he's one of the beings that are on these triangular crafts that visit that people have actually seen here at treetop level on the property. So they've got multiple purposes. And I'm not saying that people are right with the Galactic Federation and what have you. That hasn't been my experience. I've heard on the grapevine through my contacts of these other organizations. It comes down to the fruit for me, which is the assistance from the United Galactic Council, making sure that the civilians of their own worlds are not destroyed with their own customs and their own ways, and that there will be things that dissolve as consciousness elevates on those planets, meaning old customs and things and ways that may not have served those people or what have you. That's one of the main purposes, is that the hearts and the minds of the people are kept intact as they elevate, rather than, as we saw with a NASA study years ago, I can't remember the name at the moment, where, as I was saying, usually when higher developed civilizations interact with a lower formed civilization, those customs overpower the lower civilization and it alters them. This is all about us specifically in the Earth human case, as it's been revealed, that it's very important for us to say in sovereignty and not even trust everything, even the Pleiadians or the Orions or the Sirians or Lyrians are saying, because there can even be little slight trade deals that go wrong that they might just make a bit more off us or rip us off a little bit, and it might be a bit of friendly brother-sisterly love in that. But they've been very persistent and very strong about making sure us Earth humans do not lose sovereignty even to positive extraterrestrial or angelic intelligences, that we're here to, if you want to use the term star seeds or evolved souls, are here to make sure and play a part in that evolutionary process and make sure that that's rectified, and that by 2026 we will see the next marker in terms of things getting better than what we've gone through since 2020. But then by 2030, it's really, you're either on the new Earth timeline or you're not. And that will be the new norm, where either way that you sit on that will be the new norm, to where there'll be relief felt extremely to like the point before 2020 with what we endured. And so it's a bit of a transitional period, but they've relayed this in some of the contacts.
Okay, yeah, that was the Brookings report from 1960, where they talked about that. There's this history we have where less developed civilizations can collapse when more highly evolved civilizations appear, and that happened, of course, in the Americas. But there's also the contrary case of Meiji Japan, where more advanced, more technologically advanced civilization appeared. But the indigenous people, the Japanese or the samurai leaders or the emperor, they kind of like decided to kind of guide the process in a way where the Japanese society would not collapse, or their culture would not collapse, that they would integrate it. And of course, Japan was able to incorporate Western technology sufficiently quickly and holistically, to the extent that by 1940s, they could actually challenge the United States and get within a hair's breadth of defeating the United States in a high-tech war. So I think that that is what's happening now on planet Earth. I think this is why some of the more kind of like, let's say, the technologically savvy organizations, secret space programs, councils and so forth are wanting to help humanity kind of like follow that path of Meiji Japan, where, you know, we don't rush the process where we could risk that societal collapse, but we follow the Japanese model of like taking it all in, because this is what Haim Eshet said to apparently what he was told, that the Galactic Federation said that America wasn't yet ready for contact. That was back in 2020. We need to develop more our technological side. So now we are 4 years down the track, and it looks like under this Trump administration, we're going to resume that process, and maybe this is where disclosure will happen. Yeah, you want to comment on any of that?
Yeah, look, I can't remember where it was I was telling you before this, but going back years now, and it was actually before there was ever a mention from Trump about a Space Force, I was told that there would be one created, and that the purpose not only was, you know, to have a Space Force, but was to seed machinery, devices, these crafts, exotic crafts and propulsion systems and even weaponry into the Space Force, because we've already got them. So basically, like on a public domain level, we've got a Space Force. Oh, they're going to have these awesome ships. They're going to have this. They're going to have that. It's like, no, we've already got it. It was a front to seed this in so we can now humanize the space programs, and mainly even Stargates, because as much as the crafts are awesome, a lot of these beings and delegates and even how travel is done is mainly through stargates. So it makes crafts look obsolete in some sense. So they've definitely got their purposes the crafts do. So yeah.
Now, you've mentioned 2026 as the next mark where we reach a point in our technological and societal global evolution where there's going to be some big changes felt. So what were you told about 2026?
Well, it goes back to even before COVID. I was actually saying, and again, if you like with the guys from Edge of Wonder Now Rise TV, I was saying that I wasn't 100% specific on some things, but some things I was with the intel. And I'm not a prophet or anything like that. But the way even now that I was saying, even back in 2020, people were going, "Oh, we're out of the first wave. This is done." I said, "No, there's more waves, and then the economic situation is going to kick in." Now, more this is towards the point that the economic turmoil and social upheaval that we're going through is really going to go into 2026, and we're going to feel relief around that time. The way they said, if we stay on the timeline we're at by now, and that from that relief, the real relief won't be felt till about 2030 if you're in alignment with that, to where it will be the new norm. We're not going back to a norm that we had in 2019 ever again, but the new norm would be felt by then. But the glimpse of that would be seen around 2026. On another note of what you've mentioned as well, I think we can have all the technology we want in the world, but our inner spiritual technology from the heart space, as airy-fairy as that sounds to some, I believe that is what, as it's been even put to me, makes medbeds look obsolete. Medbeds have their purpose. I was talking and knew about medbeds over a decade ago. I've spoken to people at the UN, the Vatican, as I've said last time with James. James knew about medbeds going back to the 1980s, and everyone's acting like this is all new. I've been very frustrated at some of the people in the meetings that I've had because they've been withholding and sitting on this tech for whatever reasons they wanted to give me. That to me isn't good enough. And then people are going on about this financial reset and, well, the money's being allocated to people doing the work like you, this, that, the other. I'm not, it's like, great, I know these things are real, but my thing has been, I'm not waiting on somebody to change my tomorrow. I'm changing my tomorrow by changing my today, and I'll put everything I've got on the line to do that. And that's what I'd want people to be, take from this interview, is that you hear about the med beds, the RV, the financial reset, the quantum system, all this, yeah, it's fine and dandy. But where are you right now, and how can you contribute to a better world right now? Because all that's real, but if you're sitting there waiting on it, you could be sitting there waiting for an extremely long time. This can be a slow rollout disclosure, or it can be overnight. It's up to us as a collective, unfortunately, how that rolls out. But by being the best you're doing your part for playing your part in that unrolling right now. And to do that isn't about advanced technologies, as we've talked about. It's great, these machines, the flying saucers, what have you, but why not skip that and go straight to the Merkabah light body?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. And you've mentioned the ascension process. We seem to be going through that. More and more people kind of like understanding the importance of integrating the heart and the mind in understanding the big picture. And as you said, I mean, these technologies, I mean, people are always asking me when will the medbeds become available? And sure, I mean, it's very tempting. I mean, I would love to be able to, chop off a few decades off the age. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, would I make myself dependent on that technology and who made it and whatever kind of subtle agenda is there? Wouldn't it just maybe hang on, be a bit more patient so that I learn how to kind of ride these ascension energies? So that, as you were saying, you're using your mind, your heart to be able to, manifest your own Merkabah body, and then you can kind of like change your body or heal yourself. So yeah, I agree. I think that's the way to go. And I don't think everyone will be able to do it, but I think those that are listening to this are certainly, we're going to be able to do it.
And James Gilliland's mentioned that before as well. You know James quite well, and he was saying, look, if words to the effect, I won't speak for him, but if you're a bad person or you're not done the inner healing, those med beds will work, but for how long? And the other point I want to make with this as well is that don't forget about the human experience. Like I did say, what about skipping technology and going to the inner technology? And we now know through heart math, we've also got neuron networks in the heart. I do a lot of heart-based, and I have for nearly 20 years, based around the inner sensitivity work that I do through heart breathing. Heart math call it heart-focused breathing. But the thing, even though I've been taken to other worlds and experiences multidimensionally, the amount that I've had, I'd ask people and invite them to think about just the Earth human experience now. And I've said this 100 times, the touch of another, the smell of a rose, love, a hug, all these different things, the physicality of the beautiful parts of this experience can't be experienced like this in the other realms. Yeah, there's ultimate love in the other realms. We can experience ultimate love here in a frequency here. And we're here to transcend here, and it's done through playing a part within in being human. So with that said, it's like just calm the farm for a moment. Think about, we're here, be present, and enjoy the human experience, not trying to get to the next destination. It's the journey, because when you get to that destination, you want to get to something else after that. And I believe that we've all come from being initiated and brought into existence from an ascended state, and we lose that state to refine that by experiencing source in all the different complexities that it's got to be experienced. So as beautiful as all this is, I think out of body and in between lives, all this is a joke. I think we know it all, but while we're here and we're playing a part in it to elevate it, of course it's no joke. It's very serious. But I just wanted to add that I just think, in between each life and our supreme existence, these things aren't wondrous to us. We know them. It's what we create that is wondrous, being creator beings, which is what we are here to do as well.
So, Peter, where do people go? I'm not here? Okay, all right. Well, you just give me the word. We're just wrapping up, so. Okay. You tell me when I can start again. Okay. Well, I can see myself.
You're ascending on it.
I'm seeing myself. I mean, I'm there. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
All right. I'll resume. So, Peter, why don't you tell us where people can go to find out more about what you're doing, to learn about your sanctuary, and to maybe buy your books?
Yeah, so there's jayasanctuary.com, Jaya Sanctuary.com. There's petermaxwellslattery.com and also esetiaustralia.org. They're pretty much all the same site, but that's just all the different links and avenues that people find me. But there's also a lot of free meditations there. The books, the movies, a lot of the footage and the evidence that I've been presenting now for 15 years is up there, as well as the social media links and websites, as well as free clearings on Saturdays that I do remotely if people feel out of form there. And there's regular updates as well. So yeah, that's just a brief hit on where I can be found.
Fantastic. Well, you've been a wonderful guest and shared a lot of wisdom, so thank you for that, and I look forward to talking to you again in 2025.
Yeah, likewise, many blessings, and really appreciate what you're doing for humanity, because you're enlightening a lot of people and helping to get it out and educate, about this greater reality. So thank you for all you're doing as well, Michael.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.